Hey guys, tonight we will dive into the darkest, bleakest depths of history, where every stone of the Tower of London still breathes the memory of the 13th of February in the year 1542. As the blade met her neck, Queen Catherine Howard's trembling lips barely whispered her final prayer, crimson blood spattering across the scaffold steps, and the crowd erupted in cheers, as if they were witnessing a merciless tragedy by candlelight. If you think you can remain unfazed by what is about to be revealed, prepare yourself to be challenged. And remember, these 101 shocking facts have been compiled from numerous sources, some drawn from historical records, others passed down as oral legend, so watch until the end to discern truth from rumor. If you encounter any details that seem dubious or surprising, don't hesitate to comment below so we can all discuss together. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Let me know in the comments where you're watching from and what time it is for you right now. Now, dim the lights. Maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum. And let's ease into tonight's journey together. Welcome to the dramatic journey of Catherine Howard, a 19-year-old girl who, not yet a year into her reign as Queen of England, found herself standing at the scaffold. This story will send shivers down your spine with its brutality, but it also serves as a haunting lesson about power, innocence, and survival in the harsh Tudor court. Now, as the lights grow dim and a gentle breeze drifts through the window, join me in uncovering 101 truths about Catherine Howard, secrets few know or dare to speak of. Prepare to touch the darkest corners of royal history, beginning with childhood mysteries and even the physical flaws that haunted her all her life. Shocking fact number 1, losing her mother. Losing her final support. Catherine Howard was only about 5 or 6 years old when her beloved mother, Mrs. Joyce Culpeper, passed away. In that moment, the warm presence that had guided her life vanished, leaving her tender heart alone amid the cold intrigues of the Tudor court. Deprived of her mother's caring hand and protective embrace, Catherine became a portable asset in the power plays of the nobility. At every household she entered, she was no longer seen as a cherished child, but displayed like merchandise, ready to be exchanged for influence, status, or wealth. In the harsh world of Tudor England, the innocence of a 6-year-old was replaced by the unwilling duty of service, and the little girl's heart had to grow hard to survive. Shocking fact number 2, first experience of abuse. By the time Catherine had turned 13, Henry Manox, her music teacher, was invited into her life to instruct her in playing the virginals. Yet after those lessons, Manox abused the authority granted by his role, committing acts that are now rightly recognized as criminal. In Tudor eyes, a girl who had reached her first menstruation was deemed old enough for marriage, so his actions were regarded as a rite of passage rather than wrongdoing. However, by modern standards, this was an unequivocal crime of child abuse. With no mother to protect her, Catherine believed it was an expression of affection and carried the deep psychological wounds from that betrayal throughout her life. Her innocence was shattered, leaving her with a lingering fear that no place was truly safe and that no one truly cared about the silent tears of a child. Shocking fact number 3, her father, a gambling addict who abandoned the family, Lord Edmund Howard. Catherine's father was a younger son who inherited no estate and sank into gambling as an escape from his insecurities. One by one, the family's fortunes vanished. Warm family dinners turned into meager meals of stale bread and water. Then, in the throes of his addiction, Lord Howard abandoned his young wife and small children, leaving them in dire poverty. Catherine, just a little girl, watched her father vanish amid the roll of dice, learning cruelly to seek affection from strangers, a harsh lesson in the shifting nature of parental love. Shocking fact number 4, the horrific household of her step-grandmother. When Catherine turned 10, the Howard family sent her to live with her step-grandmother, Mrs. Agnes Howard. At first glance, the household seemed to offer proper care for young noble ladies. But within its walls lurked terrible darkness. The girls shared a dormitory with doors, always left ajar so that men could enter freely after nightfall. There was no strict supervision, nor clear boundaries, and no collective effort to protect them. On long, silent nights, Catherine's quiet sobs echoed through the cold chambers, with nowhere safe to turn. Instead of guidance and nurturing, she learned to endure in silence, building an invisible wall between herself and the outside world. Shocking fact. Number 5. The Howard family. A curse from birth, Catherine was born around the year 1521 into the Howard dynasty, one of the most powerful forces in England at the time. Yet that power always came with peril. Amid grand ceremonies and lavish banquets, the Howards lived on a razor's edge between prosperity and tragedy. Only 15 years earlier, her famous cousin Anne Boleyn had lost her head on the very same ground for political reasons, leaving a chilling testament to the cost of ambition. Her uncle, the Duke of Norfolk, driven by boundless ambition, treated his own kin as pieces on the chessboard of the throne. From her very first breath, Catherine bore the family's curse, destined to struggle with the shadow of dynastic tragedy at every step. Shocking fact number 6. The entire household knew and ignored it. Henry Manox's abuse of Catherine took place in full view, with witnesses throughout her grandmother's house. Yet instead of intervening or offering protection, the adults in the family turned a blind eye, treating his actions as mere entertainment or a privilege of their powerful lineage. They ignored the sobbing of the young girl, allowing emotional pain to burrow deep into her fragile soul. Shocking fact number 7. The misbelief in love. Deprived of parental protection, Catherine believed that Manox's affection for her was genuine. This is the shared agony of abuse victims, a hope for love nurtured by the very person who exploited them. That psychological manipulation rooted itself in her heart, coloring every relationship thereafter with suspicion and fear. Shocking fact. Number 8. Abandoned like a broken toy. When Henry Manox grew bored, he discarded Catherine like a worthless object past its use. She was only 13 at the time, bewildered by the sense of rejection. The profound psychological trauma led her to believe her worth lay solely in her ability to satisfy a man's desires, an insecurity she carried into adulthood. Shocking fact number 9. A second relationship even more cruel. Not long after, at the age of 15, Catherine became involved with Francis Derham, a second-rank nobleman who was charming yet merciless. Derham skillfully isolated her from friends and family, convincing her that only he could protect and reciprocate her love. Once again, she fell into an emotional trap, woven from power and loneliness. Shocking fact. Number 10. The secret marriage under Tudor law. If two individuals of suitable age professed private vows and consummated their union, they were legally considered husband and wife, even without a formal ceremony. Catherine and Francis Derham called each other husband and wife before a few household friends, exchanged rings, and shared a bed day after day, without a priest or magistrate as witness. That secret bond became a legally binding ink stain, later used as damning evidence against the young queen. Despite the king's supreme authority. Shocking fact number 11. The dormitory is a playground for predators. In her grandmother's household, Catherine and the other girls lived in an open dormitory where doors were never locked after dark. Men of the household would come and go at will, slipping quietly through the corridors to claim their chosen target. There was no right to refuse. No place to hide enduring the nightly visits was the only means of survival. In the dim candlelight, the girls learned that the walls offered no protection, and that safety was a luxury they could not afford. Shocking fact number 12. Family exploitation of her past for political gain. Despite knowing every indiscretion in Catherine's history, to her uncle, the Duke of Norfolk, deliberately concealed these details when he presented her to the king. He viewed Catherine not as his niece, but as a pawn in the deadly chess game of Tudor politics. By hiding her intimate past, he secured her audience with the most powerful man in England, treating her life as expendable in the pursuit of influence and favour. Shocking fact number 13. Entering court unprepared. In the year 1539, Catherine was summoned to serve as a lady-in-waiting to Queen Anne of Cleves. She arrived at court a youthful beauty, barely 18, yet wholly unprepared for the treacherous currents swirling beneath the glittering facade. She had little understanding of court protocol, no mentor to guide her through whispered intrigues, and no map to chart a safe course. Surrounded by schemers and spies, Catherine found herself vulnerable to forces she could neither see nor control. Shocking fact. Number 14. Meeting the tyrant behind the throne. By 1540, King Henry VIII was a man transformed by power and age. At 49, he was morbidly obese, suffering from festering leg ulcers that oozed foul-smelling discharge, forcing courtiers to perfume the air around him. His mental state had grown paranoid and ruthless. 2 of his previous wives had already lost their heads under his decree. In his eyes, Catherine was merely the next sacrificial lamb, a young, unsuspecting victim to be offered on the altar of his unyielding authority. Shocking fact number 15. The hasty wedding a transaction, not a nuptial. A mere 19 days after annulling his marriage to Anne of Cleves, King Henry VIII secretly wed Catherine Howard. There was no grand ceremony, no cheering crowds, only whispered arrangements in the dim corridors of court. The lavish gifts of gold, jewels, and lands bestowed upon her were not tokens of affection, but rather a calculated payment, ensuring her complete submission. In this shadowy exchange, Catherine learned that she was not a queen by love, but by contract. Shocking fact number 16. The terrifying wedding day. The ceremony itself was a hurried, private affair, devoid of fanfare. No pealing bells marked the union. No public rejoicing celebrated her elevation. Instead, the rushed vows served to bind Catherine before any voice of dissent could arise. Behind the velvet and lace of her bridal gown lay a hidden death warrant, the promise of power that concealed the looming blade of judgment. Shocking fact number 17. The night of terror. A bridal trial. Catherine's wedding night was far from romantic. Henry, now 49, was plagued by festering leg ulcers that emitted a foul odour and forced him to breathe laboriously. His body, ravaged by age and disease, presented a horrifying contrast to the youthful bride beside him. Catherine, trembling on the edge of that narrow bed. I knew well the fate of her cousin Anne Boleyn, whose head had fallen by the same executioner's sword. The terror of sharing a bed with a man who had beheaded her own kin was a test of courage no bride should ever face. Shocking fact. Number 18. Striving to be the perfect wife, determined to survive, Catherine threw herself into her duties with grace. She smiled at court rituals, dined with nobles in composed silence, and even distributed alms to the poor outside the palace gates. Yet beneath her gracious exterior lay a heart starved for genuine affection. In her vulnerability, she made concessions, softening her stance toward those who posed a threat, hoping to secure allies rather than enemies. Shocking fact. Number 19. The rose without a thorn. And in visible pressure, Henry dubbed her his rose without a thorn, a nickname that praised her purity and beauty. But that very image became a prison. Catherine lived in constant fear that her past missteps would be unearthed, staining the spotless reputation imposed upon her. Each day, she tended to the facade of innocence, terrified that one misstep would reveal the hidden thorn that could cost her everything. Shocking fact number 20. Her past weaponized against her those who had once held her secrets. Manox, Derryham, and later Thomas Culpeper now brandished them as weapons at court. Their boasts of intimacy and clandestine vows became ammunition in conspiracies aimed at destroying her. Every whispered rumor of her youth was weaponized. Each recollection of private acts twisted into proof of treason. Shocking fact number 21. A forbidden romance with Thomas Culpeper. In a desperate search for genuine affection, Catherine became entangled with Thomas Culpeper, a member of the king's privy chamber, with a ruthless reputation, accused of rape and pardoned only by royal favour. Their secret correspondence, filled with ardent declarations, became the greatest threat to her survival. Love letters, once symbols of devotion, transformed into irrefutable evidence of betrayal in Henry's eyes, sealing her fate as a traitor to the throne. Shocking fact number 22. The failed scheme to buy silence. In a final effort to protect herself, Catherine used her newly acquired status to arrange positions at court for Henry Manox and Francis Derham. Hoping that financial security would convince them to keep her secrets, she envisioned silencing them with the trappings of privilege. Instead, Manox grew enraged at being sidelined, and Derham, emboldened by his position, amassed fresh proof of their clandestine vows. Both men transformed into key witnesses against her, turning her attempt at protection into a fatal trap. Shocking fact number 23. A court teeming with hidden enemies. Catherine soon discovered that her greatest threats lurked not only among the conservative Catholic faction who despised her very presence, but also among envious courtiers eager to topple the new queen. Every whispered rumour and curious glance became ammunition in their silent campaign. They watched for any slip, any misstep, waiting patiently for the moment to strike and unseat the youngest queen England had ever known. Shocking fact number 24. The affair with Culpeper knew passion. New wounds perhaps here. Deepest betrayal. Catherine's first genuine feelings bloomed with Thomas Culpeper, a gentleman of the Privy Chamber, whose charm masked a ruthless heart. Their secret trysts offered her a fleeting taste of true affection, but also inflicted fresh injuries on her already battered soul. Love letters passed in the shadows became the very evidence that would condemn her, sealing the breach between her desires and her duty. Shocking fact number 25. Love letters, the papers of doom. Those intimate letters, penned in trembling script, fell into the hands of the royal courts. Once symbols of passion and hope, they were twisted into proof of adultery and treason. The heartfelt words she used to express longing and devotion were recast as evidence of a conspiracy against the crown. In Tudor England, a queen's letter was as powerful as a king's decree, only this time it declared her death sentence. Shocking fact number 26. Manox's betrayal to John Lascelles. In late 1541, Henry Manox rekindled his connection with John Lascelles, a religious reformer bitterly opposed to the Howard family, lured by the promise of revenge. Manox spilled every secret: the childhood abuse, the hidden marriage, the clandestine rendezvous. Lascelles, seizing the moment, brought these revelations before the King's Council, unleashing a legal onslaught that shook the foundations of Catherine's fragile protection. Shocking fact number 27. Investigation by torture. What followed was a brutal inquisition. Catherine's personal attendants and friends were seized and subjected to torture to extract confessions. Their bodies and wills were bent until they revealed every intimate detail of Catherine's life. Under the threat of unspeakable pain, they spoke the words that would fill the charges against her, piece by piece, constructing a tapestry of alleged crimes. Shocking fact number 28. Derham tortured into confession. Francis Derham himself was arrested and brought before the council. Under the merciless pressure of the rack, he admitted to his secret marriage with Catherine and, in a final blow, implicated Thomas Culpeper in their affair. His coerced confession provided the council with the last threads of evidence needed. With Derham's testimony, the charges of adultery and treason were sealed, and Catherine's fate was irrevocably determined. Shocking fact number 29. Culpeper's arrest. Based on the coerced testimony of Francis Derham and the incriminating love letters, Thomas Culpeper was arrested. Initially, he denied any improper conduct, But under relentless interrogation, he admitted meeting the Queen in secret. He stopped short of confirming physical intimacy. Yet his partial confession provided enough ground for the Crown to detain him. The very evidence intended to remain hidden now became the cornerstone of a case against both Culpeper and Catherine Howard. Shocking fact number 30. Arrest meant to induce terror. Catherine Howard was taken into custody on the 12th of November, 1541. Without a clear statement of charges, guards surrounded her apartments day and night, their silent presence gradually crushing her hope. As the reality of her predicament sank in, she understood that this was no ordinary imprisonment, but a carefully orchestrated terror tactic. Each footstep in the hallway, each locked door, whispered the grim truth of her approaching doom. Shocking fact number 31. Psychological breakdown. At no more than 19 years old, Catherine's mental resilience collapsed under the weight of fear and despair. Witnesses reported her alternating between uncontrollable sobbing and manic laughter, a haunting dance of grief and hysteria. She refused food, could not sleep, and drifted in and out of a trance-like state, as though her spirit had already abandoned her body. The young queen, once vibrant, was reduced to a fragile shell of anguish. Shocking fact number 32. Henry's fury unleashed. When King Henry learned of the full extent of Catherine's past, his reaction was not sorrow but seething rage. Feeling betrayed and humiliated, he vowed not only to punish his wife, but to exact vengeance on anyone linked to her scandal. Plans were drawn to extend the net of retribution to her entire circle, demonstrating that his wrath would spare no one. In his eyes, the ultimate crime was having been deceived by his own queen. Shocking fact number 33. Family's betrayal. The same relatives who had engineered Catherine's rise to the throne now turned their backs on her to save themselves. The Duke of Norfolk, who once championed her cause, publicly renounced her and appealed solely for his own mercy. Abandoned in her final hours, Catherine found herself utterly alone, deprived of any familial defense or compassion. The betrayal of blood, more painful than any executioner's blow, echoed through her isolation. Shocking fact number 34. Retroactive law to justify murder, to legitimize Catherine's execution. Henry VIII had Parliament enact a brand new law, making it treasonous to conceal past romantic entanglements before marrying the king. This law operated retroactively, criminalizing actions that had been legal at the time Catherine committed them. With a stroke of political pen, an innocent past became capital offense, ensuring her condemnation under the very statutes designed to bind her. Shocking fact number 35. Denied legal counsel. Catherine was forbidden any legal representation throughout her incarceration. She faced a cadre of seasoned lawyers who constructed the charges against her, while she, lacking both training and access to critical documents, could offer no effective defense. Stripped of the basic right to counsel, her ability to challenge the accusations or to mitigate her situation was effectively obliterated, leaving her as defenseless in court as she had been in the royal bedroom. Shocking fact number 36. A show trial. The proceedings against Catherine were a farce from start to finish. She was never permitted to confront her accusers or to present contrary evidence. Instead, the court heard only confessions obtained under torture and the love letters that had been seized. No genuine judicial inquiry took place. The sole purpose was to ratify a predetermined verdict of guilt. In the eyes of Tudor justice, her fate had been sealed long before the trial began. Shocking fact number 37. Condemned without a comforting word. On the 7th of February, 1542, Parliament passed a bill of attainder declaring Catherine Howard guilty of treason. She was never permitted to stand before the Assembly or to question her accusers. No final plea. No opportunity to address the lawmakers. Her condemnation unfolded like a grim theatrical production, scripted in advance and devoid of mercy. The proceedings offered only the illusion of justice, stripping her of the simple comfort of a last defense. Shocking fact number 38. Co-conspirators executed first on the 10th of December. 1541. Francis Derham was hanged, drawn, and quartered for his secret marriage to Catherine, while Thomas Culpeper, by virtue of his noble birth, received the comparatively swifter death by decapitation. These two men, once Catherine's clandestine partners, were publicly executed before her, a brutal demonstration intended to make her acutely aware of the dire consequences awaiting her if she did not submit. Shocking fact number 39. Imprisoned in the Tower of London. In February of 1542, Catherine was transferred to the Tower of London, the same grim fortress where her cousin Anne Boleyn had languished. Each cold stone and narrow window barred with iron served as a constant reminder of the family tragedy repeating itself. The oppressive solitude and historical weight of her surroundings compounded her despair, as every footstep and echo amplified the pressure bearing down on her young shoulders. Shocking fact number 40. Severe psychological collapse within the tower's damp walls. Catherine's mental state unraveled completely. She alternated between desolate sobbing and hollow laughter, refusing food and unable to sleep, exhibiting symptoms akin to post-traumatic stress, chronic fatigue, panic attacks, and disorientation. She appeared as a spectre of her former vibrant self. The once bright and lively queen-to-be was reduced to a fragile figure consumed by fear and confusion. Shocking fact number 41. Practicing for her own execution. In a scene as horrifying as it was heartbreaking, Catherine requested that her execution block be brought to her cell so she could rehearse placing her neck upon it. This macabre rehearsal revealed the depth of her terror, that even in the final hours, she feared a bungled execution more than death itself. It underscored the tragic reality of a life treated like a broken toy, destined to be discarded once it no longer served a purpose. Shocking fact number 42. Henry's unwavering resolve. Despite numerous appeals for clemency citing her youth and the years of abuse she endured as a child, Henry VIII remained unyielding. In his view, Catherine's fate was not about justice, but about maintaining absolute control. He insisted that her death serve as a stern lesson. Any woman who dared defy or disappoint him would meet the same end. His unshakable resolve effectively erased half of Catherine's life in a single, irrevocable decision. Shocking fact number 43. A symbolic execution date. Catherine's execution was scheduled for the 13th of February, 1542, precisely one day after the anniversary of Anne Boleyn's death. And during Lent, a season of penitence and reflection, the timing was more than practical. It was laden with symbolism, intended to reinforce the narrative of purging sin. By selecting this date, the crown underscored the erasure of her sins from both memory and flesh, ensuring that her end would resonate as a deliberate act of ritual purification. Shocking fact number 44. Denied the right to speak last in Tudor custom. Noble prisoners were often granted the dignity of a final speech to proclaim innocence, offer contrition, or request prayers. Catherine Howard was expressly denied this small mercy. Instead, she was marched to the scaffold in silence. Forbidden any words of defense or comfort, imagine the hush that fell over the crowd as she was led forward. No trembling voice, no plea for compassion, just the sound of her steps echoing against the hard stones of Tower Green. Shocking fact number 45. A night of pure terror. Throughout that final night, Catherine's cell became a chamber of unending horror. Guards reported hearing her cries of anguish as she pleaded for mercy, her sobs growing hoarse until exhaustion claimed her voice. There was no reprieve, no gentle lullaby to soothe her pounding heart. The relentless guard presence offered no kindness. Their cold indifference only amplified the agony, forcing her to endure a vigil of terror until dawn broke. Shocking fact number 46. Dragged to the block. On the morning of the 13th of February, 1542, Catherine was borne to the execution site on Tower Green, supported on either side by stern-faced guards. She stumbled forward in a state of physical and emotional collapse. The assembled spectators, accustomed to brutality, watched in grim fascination. This spectacle of death had become a form of cruel entertainment. The sight of a queen, once adorned in silks, now a fragile figure led to her end, underscored the hoodie terror of royal power. Shocking fact number 47. The old executioner's blade. The sword that fell that day belonged to the same French executioner who had beheaded Anne Boleyn only 15 years earlier. This deliberate choice served as a chilling symbol, a warning that the Howard women, no matter how closely tied to the throne, would meet a similar fate if they displeased the king. The reconstruction of history's cycle of violence left no doubts about the crown's ruthless resolve. Blood debts were paid in kind. Shocking fact number 48. Final words, a plea for prayer. Kneeling before the block, Catherine Howard managed a single entreaty: "Pray for my soul and for the king." No declaration of innocence. No curse upon her executioners. Only a humble request for spiritual succor. Even in her last breath, she sought to placate male authority, echoing a lifetime of forced submission. Those few whispered words drifted upward, absorbed by the cold morning air. A haunting farewell from a young woman who never had the chance to assert her own voice. Shocking fact number 49. One swift stroke by to the standards. Her execution was mercifully quick. The French swordsman delivered a single, clean blow that severed her head from her body. Compared to the botched, multiple strikes that many condemned faced, Catherine's death was remarkably swift. In that fleeting moment, she was spared the prolonged agony that so many endured. That solitary strike, though brutal, was perhaps the only kindness shown to a prisoner who had suffered far too long. Shocking fact number 50. A silent burial. After her execution, Catherine's body was carried into the chapel of St. Peter ad Vincula within the tower walls, laid to rest beside the unmarked grave of her cousin, Anne Boleyn. No grand tomb, no carved epitaph. Her final resting place remained anonymous. The hush of that sacred space enveloped her remains, leaving behind no outward signs to mark the passing of a queen. In death, as in life, her legacy was buried in obscurity. Shocking fact number 51. Age 19 to 21, a life of tragedy. Historians still debate Catherine's exact birth year, estimating that she was between 19 and 21 at the time of her death. Her entire adult life, barely half a decade, was consumed by scandal, betrayal, and fear. She never experienced genuine autonomy or the simple joys of youth. From a girl who lost her mother in early childhood to a queen whose reign lasted mere months, Catherine's life stands as a stark testament to a fate sealed by forces beyond her control. Shocking fact number 52. Henry quickly sought a new wife within mere weeks of Catherine Howard's execution. King Henry VIII was already surveying candidates for his sixth queen. In the icy corridors of power, the news of Catherine's demise barely had time to settle before the search for a replacement began. This chilling indifference revealed a cold truth: Catherine had been regarded by Henry not as a partner, but as a plaything whose value expired the moment she ceased to please him. In his eyes, she was disposable, a transient ornament rather than a human being ready to be swapped out for the next object of royal desire. Shocking fact number 53. Catastrophe for the Howard family. In the fallout from Catherine's downfall, her uncle, the Duke of Norfolk, was arrested and stood on the brink of execution himself. His ambitious machinations had backfired catastrophically, turning the once mighty Howard family into pariahs at court. Lands were seized, titles revoked, and reputations shattered. The dynasty that had used Catherine as a strategic pawn saw its power evaporate almost overnight. The price of treating a niece as a disposable asset was the near destruction of all the family's fortunes and influence. Shocking fact number 54. No one defended her, not a single contemporary chronicle came to Catherine's defence. Those few who privately pitied her remained silent, too terrified of Henry's wrath to publicly challenge the narrative of her guilt. In the cold official records, she appears as a traitor deserving her fate, with no voice raised in her favour. At the moment of her greatest need, Catherine found herself utterly alone, abandoned by every ally who might have offered even a murmur of support. Shocking fact number 55, a dangerous legal precedent. The retroactive law that branded the concealment of past romances as treasonous did more than seal Catherine's fate. It established a perilous precedent. From that point forward, any future queen who harboured a secret, however innocent, could be accused of treason. This legal innovation weaponized intimacy, turning personal privacy into a mortal peril. A whispered memory, a hidden dalliance, became enough to justify a death sentence, ensuring that women at court lived in perpetual fear of their own pasts. Shocking fact number 56. Deprived of a fair trial, Catherine was never granted the right to face her accusers, nor was she allowed legal counsel to mount a defence. The proceedings against her were predetermined. Her conviction was arranged before any evidence was properly examined. This sham of a trial, an orchestrated spectacle disguised as justice, served only to provide a veneer of legality. In truth, Catherine's guilt was assumed. Her sentence decided long before she ever entered the courtroom. Shocking fact number 57. Love letters as evidence of treason. The private letters Catherine had penned to Thomas Culpeper were dragged into the public record as proof of a conspiracy against the crown. Intimate words of affection and longing were recast as treasonous plotting, repurposed to demonstrate that she had turned her loyalty away from the king. In a cruel inversión, her personal expressions of love, once treasured in secrecy, became the official charges used to condemn her. Shocking fact number 58. Treason for acts that weren't crimes. Perhaps the greatest injustice of all was that Catherine was punished for acts that had not been criminal at the time she committed them. The very law used to condemn her was enacted retroactively, violating the fundamental principle that one cannot be tried for an act that was not illegal when carried out. By rewriting the legal code to reach back into her past, Henry ensured her execution could be justified. In the Tudor legal system, the fairness was sacrificed to maintain absolute royal authority, and Catherine paid the ultimate price for a crime that did not exist when she first committed it. Shocking fact number 59. Beatings and torture of her closest confidantes. Catherine Howard's attendants and friends were dragged into the hallways of interrogation and subjected to brutal beatings and torture. Under the cold light of flickering torches, these loyal companions had bones cracked, flesh whipped, and voices shattered until they confessed to every intimate detail of their queen's life. The cruelty extended beyond mere questioning. It was a systematic campaign of terror designed to extract any shred of testimony useful to the crown. This ruthless tactic revealed that the Tudor administration would spare no measure of violence to construct its case, trampling any sense of compassion under the guise of law. Shocking fact number 60. Deprived of a family farewell. No family member was allowed to see Catherine before her execution. In her final hours, the young queen stood utterly alone, denied even the smallest comfort of a tender farewell or a whispered word of reassurance. She lost the last right. Every condemned person clung to the chance to speak with a loved one, to feel a steady hand on her own. This final act of isolation deepened the tragedy of her story, highlighting the extent to which she was stripped of dignity and human connection at the very end. Shocking fact number 61. Henry refused all pleas for mercy. Despite the flood of letters and petitions pleading for clemency on the basis of Catherine's youth and her history of childhood abuse, King Henry VIII remained unyielding. He refused to grant any pardon, determined instead to make Catherine a warning to all who might dare to defy royal authority. In his calculated cruelty, he transformed her personal suffering into a spectacle of royal wrath, ensuring that no subsequent noblewoman would dare challenge the indomitable power of the crown. Shocking fact number 62. The execution as propaganda theatre. Every element of Catherine's execution was orchestrated as a grand demonstration of royal might. From the timing of her procession to the arrangement of spectators, the event was choreographed to maximize its impact. The spectacle served not merely to carry out a sentence, but to broadcast Henry's dominance over all social ranks. For the courtiers and commoners alike, her death became an unforgettable cautionary tale, far more powerful than any decree or decree. An indelible lesson etched into the collective memory of the realm. Shocking fact number 63. She believed she deserved her fate. Many historians note that Catherine seemed to internalize the narrative imposed upon her, coming to accept that she was truly deserving of death. Conditioned by relentless indoctrination and the collapse of her support network, she entered her final days, convinced of her own guilt. This utter psychological destruction, where the victim comes to see herself as culpable, underscores the devastating power of sustained mental cruelty. Her broken spirit serves as a stark reminder of how absolute authority can distort one's sense of self. Shocking fact number 64. Horror's impact on the VIII. Queen Catherine Howard's gruesome end cast a long shadow over her successor. Catherine Parr, the new queen, navigated every word and gesture with palpable fear, acutely aware that a single misstep might mirror Catherine's fate. Catherine's execution haunted the corridors of power like a restless spectre, reminding all who entered the king's presence that no protection, however delicate or dutiful, could withstand the caprices of absolute monarchy. Whenever a queen naively believed in her own security, the ghost of Catherine Howard whispered otherwise. Shocking fact number 65. A warning to all noble maidens. Catherine Howard's tragic fate became a cautionary tale repeated in aristocratic households across England. Mothers would remind their daughters of the young queen's downfall, urging strict adherence to chastity and absolute obedience to male authority. What began as the personal agony of a single young woman was transformed into a political weapon, one wielded to preserve the patriarchal order and discourage any hint of female autonomy or desire. In drawing-room whispers and moralistic sermons, her story served less as a lesson in compassion than as an instrument of fear, ensuring that successive generations of noble girls knew the price of stepping beyond prescribed bounds. Shocking fact number 66. A nameless grave for centuries. After her execution, Catherine's body was interred in the chapel of St. Peter ad Vincula within the Tower of London alongside other condemned souls. Yet no marker or memorial plaque ever bore her name. Over the centuries, her resting place remained unmarked, submerged beneath layers of stone and secrecy. The absence of any tombstone or inscription was the final act in the erasure of her identity, a potent denial of her humanity. With no name to guide mourners, Catherine's grave became a silent testament to history's willingness to forget those it once publicly destroyed. Shocking fact number 67. History written by men. The official Tudor chronicles and subsequent histories were composed almost exclusively by men who accepted, without question, the propaganda framing Catherine as a wanton seductress. These male-authored accounts emphasized her supposed licentiousness, while neglecting to explore the systematic abuse and exploitation she had endured since childhood. As a result, the enduring image of Catherine Howard has been that of a scandalous vixen, rather than a victim, a narrative shaped by those in power to justify her execution and obscure the sins of her abusers. Shocking fact number 68. Remains beyond DNA analysis. Unlike other historical figures whose remains have yielded new insights through modern forensics, Catherine's final resting place is inaccessible to archaeologists. The tower's chapel forbids excavation, leaving her bones undisturbed and preventing any DNA testing. As a result, questions about her health, possible illnesses, or genetic conditions remain unanswered. The choice to leave her grave intact may reflect a desire to maintain the mystery, but it also denies us the chance to humanize her through scientific discovery. Shocking fact number 69. Possible pregnancy at execution. Some scholars have speculated that Catherine may have been pregnant by Thomas Culpeper when she was executed. If true, this would amplify the tragedy, adding the death of an unborn child to her suffering. Yet, without remains to examine and no extant medical records, this haunting possibility remains conjecture. The rumor alone, however, underscores the depth of her victimization, condemned not only for her past, but potentially for carrying another life into the world. Shocking fact. Number 70 letters reveal a lonely young woman. The few surviving letters Catherine wrote do not depict a scheming adulteress, but rather a lonely teenager yearning for affection. In shaky hand, she penned confessions of her deep anxieties and her hopes for companionship. These missives, scrawled in haste and sometimes nearly illegible, offer a window into her vulnerable psyche, revealing a girl manipulated by powerful men rather than a calculating conspirator. They stand in stark contrast to the official portrayal of her as a heartless seductress. Shocking fact number 71, possible illiteracy at the throne. Given her disrupted childhood and lack of formal education, Catherine may have been functionally illiterate when she ascended to the throne. This deficit would have left her unable to read laws, decrees, or even her own trial, documents relying entirely on others to interpret the written word. Her potential illiteracy underscores how profoundly unprepared she was for the legal and political perils that ultimately consumed her. Shocking fact number 72, the court teeming with spies. Throughout her brief tenure as queen, Catherine had no private sanctuary. Royal informants and spies were embedded in her household, recording every word spoken and every gesture made. Each whispered conversation carried the risk of betrayal, each private moment vulnerable to surveillance. In an environment where no solitude existed, her fear of exposure was perpetually stoked by the knowledge that her captors were always listening. Shocking fact number 73, denied religious consolation. In Tudor tradition, condemned, nobles often received spiritual comfort from a chaplain before their execution. Catherine, however, was denied access to any meaningful religious counsel during her imprisonment. Without the solace of prayer or scripture, she faced her final days, deprived of the spiritual refuge that might have eased her terror. This denial amplified her isolation, cutting her off from one avenue of peace as she awaited death. Shocking fact number 74, personal possessions distributed before death. Even before Catherine took her final steps to the scaffold, her jewels and wardrobe were apportioned among the king's courtiers. Necklace. Each fine gown was reclaimed as spoils of court favour, a clear message that she was already considered dead in the realm of politics. The preemptive redistribution of her personal effects rendered her existence completely void. In the eyes of the crown, Catherine had ceased to be a sovereign and had become merely a source of wealth to be shared among the survivors. Shocking fact. Number 75. A terrifying generation gap. Catherine Howard was the second youngest of Henry VIII's 6 wives, barely 19 to 21, when she married the 49-year-old king. This vast difference in age created a relationship that could never be equal. It was, at best, an arrangement of convenience and, at worst, coercion. A teenager thrust into marriage with a man old enough to be her father, faced impossible power dynamics. Her youth and vulnerability left her ill-equipped to resist the king's demands or to assert any real agency within the marriage. In this imbalance, the very concept of consent was rendered meaningless, replaced by the imperative to comply. Shocking fact number 76, a portrait mistakenly attributed. The most famous painting thought to depict Catherine Howard may not even be her. Art historians have debated the true identity of the subject, suggesting that the portrait long labelled as Catherine could belong to another woman entirely. This misidentification adds another layer to her erasure. Even her image has been blurred by time and rumour. In death, the queen who once wore silk and jewels became a mystery face in a dusty gallery, unrecognisable to posterity. Shocking fact. Number 77, gone before her 22nd year. Catherine never reached the age of 22. Her adult life stretched for less than a half-dozen years, all of it overshadowed by exploitation, betrayal, and fear. She did not have the opportunity to mature, to learn from experience, or to find genuine companionship. Her brief tenure as queen, followed by months of terror, encapsulated a wasted potential that makes her story all the more tragic. A life that might have blossomed was instead cut short by the ruthless machinery of power. Shocking fact. Number 78. Reforming the laws of succession. The scandal surrounding Catherine prompted Parliament to rewrite royal marriage laws and clarify the rights of any offspring born to the king. These legislative changes, crafted in the aftermath of her downfall, endured for centuries, shaping the future of the English monarchy. Ironically, Catherine's death cemented legal frameworks that outlived her by generations. Her blood became the ink that redefined who could legitimately sit on the throne. Yet she herself was never granted any protection under those very statutes. Shocking fact number 79. Never crowned. Although legally married to Henry VIII, Catherine Howard was never formally crowned queen. No coronation ceremony took place to confirm her status, as had been customary for previous royal marriages. This omission reflected the king's uncertainty about her suitability and hinted at the precariousness of her position from the start. Without a crown placed upon her head, Catherine ruled, if one could call it that, more in name than in ceremony. A queen denied even the symbolic recognition afforded to her predecessors. Shocking fact. Number 80. Norfolk's gain from his niece's death. Catherine's uncle, the Duke of Norfolk, emerged from the crisis relatively unscathed, even strengthened in his political standing. By demonstrating his loyalty to Henry VIII, publicly denouncing his own niece, Norfolk secured his own safety and maintained his influence at court. His ruthless calculation illustrated the Tudor ethos of power over kinship, showing that family bonds could be sacrificed for political gain. In the aftermath of Catherine's execution, the Howard patriarch wielded his niece's demise as proof of his fealty, ensuring that his star would continue to rise even as hers was extinguished. Shocking fact. Number 81. Possible pregnancy once more. Some historians have revisited the theory that Catherine Howard may have been pregnant by Thomas Culpeper at the time of her arrest. If true, this could explain the rush to execute her so swiftly, fear that an unborn child might complicate the king's lineage and political agenda. The prospect of a pregnancy eclipses mere scandal, raising the stakes to an existential threat, an heir not fathered by the king. Though evidence remains inconclusive, the mere possibility underscores the lengths to which the Tudor regime would go to safeguard the purity of royal succession, even at the cost of executing a young woman carrying new life within her. Shocking fact number 82. Step-grandmother dies in the Tower. Agnes Howard, Catherine's step-grandmother and once her guardian, was arrested as an accessory to the Queen's alleged crimes, charged with negligence for failing to protect Catherine from exploitation. Agnes was imprisoned in the Tower of London. She died there, her final days spent among the same cold stones that witnessed her niece's downfall. Her death illustrates the far-reaching tendrils of Tudor power, ensnaring not only direct participants, but also those unfortunate enough to have raised the condemned. In the end, the Howard family's ambitions consumed even the elder matriarch. Shocking fact number 83. Manox. The abuser escapes punishment. Henry Manox, the music tutor who first abused Catherine, provided damning testimony against her, yet faced no legal consequences himself. Protected as a witness rather than tried as a perpetrator, he walked free, while the queen he had harmed lost her life. This glaring double standard exposed the gender inequality embedded in Tudor justice. Men who exploited women could leverage their own wrongdoing into immunity, while women, regardless of age or victimhood, were condemned without mercy. Shocking fact number 84. The only queen without a public trial of all Henry VIII's 6 wives. Catherine Howard stood alone in never appearing before a court or tribunal. Instead, her fate was decided by an act of Parliament, an expedited bill of attainder, denying her a formal hearing or the semblance of due process. No judge ever presided over her case. No public courtroom sessions allowed her to confront accusations or cross-examine witnesses. In effect, she was tried in secret, her guilt presumed, and her sentence predetermined. A far cry from any fair judicial standard, even by contemporary measures. Shocking fact, number 85. Setting a precedent for medical executions. Catherine's downfall established a chilling template for future queens and aristocratic women. Her execution under the guise of treason rooted in alleged sexual misconduct gave rise to the notion of eliminating inconvenient women through legalistic or medical pretexts. Subsequent cases across Europe would mimic this pattern, accusing women of moral or political crimes to justify their removal or death. Thus, Catherine's tragic end became more than her own. It became the dark blueprint for using allegations of impropriety as a tool for political assassination. Shocking fact number 86. No heir. No legacy. Catherine Howard died childless, leaving no offspring to carry her bloodline forward. In the strategic calculus of Henry VIII, this absence of heirs was counted as a benefit rather than a loss. Without children, there would be no potential rival claim to the throne from Catherine's line. No descendants to contest the king's authority or to harbour the memory of her name. In this brutal logic, the Queen's complete sterility was framed as an asset, a final act in which Catherine's worth, measured by Tudor standards, was extinguished along with her life. Shocking fact number 87. Valuables turned into spoils after Catherine's execution. Here jeweils, trinkets, and sumptuous gowns became the subject of eager competition among Henry's courtiers. These luxurious items, once worn by a queen, were suddenly reduced to spoils of victory, torn from her discarded reign and hastily distributed among the surviving elites. Far from mourning the life behind these artifacts, the court seized them as tokens of triumph, transforming her personal adornments into symbols of political conquest. Her image as a queen was literally stripped from her remains and parcelled out like currency to line the pockets and wardrobes of the powerful. Shocking fact number 88. The last queen consort to be executed, although Mary, Queen of Scots, would later be put to death under English authority. Catherine Howard remains the final spouse of an English king to be executed by beheading. Her death marked the close of a grisly chapter in Tudor history, an era when a queen's status offered no immunity from the sword. The execution of a consort, a woman who had once shared the king's bed and his bedchamber's secrets, underscored the absolute nature of royal power. No intimacy, no marriage could protect one from the capricious will of the crown. In the decades that followed, English queens would face exile, imprisonment, or forced annulment. But never again would a crowned wife be led to the block. Shocking fact number 89. A tragedy inspiring centuries of literature for nearly 500 years. Catherine Howard's story has reverberated through ballads, plays, novels, and scholarly works. From Tudor era, laments sung by street minstrels to modern historical fiction and academic treatises, her rise and fall have offered a powerful template for exploring the abuses of power and the fragility of innocence. Each retelling picks at the wounds of her life, her youth, her betrayals, her execution, using her tragedy as a mirror to examine the broader themes of tyranny, gendered injustice, and the consequences of ambition. The persistence of her tale across centuries testifies to the universal resonance of her suffering and the enduring fascination with the crown's darker side. Shocking fact number 90. No family left to defend her. By the time Catherine faced the executioner's blade, most of her close relatives had been arrested, disgraced, or even executed themselves. The very family that had once used her as a pawn in its political gambits abandoned her in the end. With no Howard kin left to speak her name or challenge the official accounts, Catherine's true story was all but erased. The public narrative settled on the portrayal of her as a consort who willingly betrayed her vows. In reality, she died, isolated and defenseless. her personal truth buried beneath layers of propaganda and fear. Without a single defender to contest the record, the young queen's voice was silenced for generations, leaving us only these chilling facts to piece together her final days. Shocking fact. Number 91. Execution costs. Charged to the royal treasury. Every aspect of Catherine Howard's execution, from the construction of the scaffold to the executioner's fee, was drawn directly from the royal coffers, funded by the taxes paid by English subjects. In the official ledgers, her death was recorded not as a tragic event, but as an itemized royal expense. The cost of building the chopping block, the materials used, and the payment to the executioner were all classified alongside routine expenditures for the maintenance of court ceremonies and day-to-day governance. In effect, the Crown treated the murder of a queen as a routine, budgeted operation, indifferent to the human life that lay beneath the ledger's neat columns. Shocking fact. Number 92. Illiteracy in legal matters. Catherine, plagued by a tumultuous childhood and scant formal education, had never mastered the complexities of legal texts. She lacked the skills to read statutes or understand the heavy responsibilities tied to her role as queen. This fundamental ignorance left her utterly defenseless when she faced charges of treason, while seasoned lawyers debated Latin phrases and precedent. Catherine could not parse the language that determined her fate. Her inability to comprehend the legal framework erected around her ensured that she could neither anticipate the charges nor mount a viable defense, deepening her helplessness in the face of state power. Shocking fact. Number 93. Public declaration of execution before Catherine's final day. Royal proclamations were posted across England, announcing her sentence of death for treason. Heralds rode from town to town, reading aloud the official decree that proclaimed her guilt and justified her execution. These public announcements, carried on the wings of authority, imprinted the notion of her wrongdoing onto the collective consciousness. They cast Catherine's downfall as a triumph of justice rather than the result of a ruthless political purge. The stark language of the declarations warned all subjects that disloyalty to the king, however private or concealed, would meet the same brutal end. Shocking fact. Number 94. An unmarked grave. Lost to time. Catherine's final resting place lies somewhere within the chapel of St. Peter ad Vincula in the Tower of London. But her grave bears no marker, no identifying inscription. Century later, historians and archaeologists remain unable to pinpoint her exact burial spot. The complete absence of a tombstone reflects a deliberate erasure without a name or even a carved date. Catherine's remains rest in anonymity. Her physical body, once queen and centre of courtly splendour, now lies beneath unremarkable stonework, her memory concealed alongside countless other lost souls. Shocking fact. Number 95. Personal effects distributed before death in a final indignity. Catherine's jewellery, garments, and personal effects were parcelled out to Prince Edward's ladies-in-waiting and other favoured courtiers even before her execution had taken place. As her body lay cold and unclaimed, her precious rings, brooches, and dresses were claimed as spoils, distributed like tokens of status among the survivors. Each item, once intimately connected to her identity, was reduced to an object of conquest. The hasty redistribution signalled that Catherine had been effectively dead in the eyes of the court well before her life was formally ended. Shocking fact. Number 96. Denied a proper funeral. Catherine Howard was denied the ceremonies customarily afforded to executed nobles. No funeral procession wound through London's streets. No solemn requiem filled the air. No dirges echoed in candlelit chapels. Instead, her body was interred swiftly and quietly, with no clergy to recite prayers and no mourners to pay respects. She was buried that same day, her passing marked by silence rather than ceremony. This ultimate snub stripped her of the dignity of a farewell, sealing her fate as a queen who died not with the honours of nobility, but as a condemned traitor erased from public memory. Shocking fact. Number 97, courtly stage in disarray. Within the gilded halls of the Tudor court, many ladies of the bedchamber harboured secret sympathy for Catherine Howard's plight. They recognised the cruelty of her fate and the injustices she endured. Yet, none dared to voice their compassion openly. Fear of royal retribution silenced their tongues, forcing them to perform the customary courtesies with hollow smiles. The shockwaves of Catherine's downfall shattered the court's veneer of stability, leaving courtiers to tread warily among whispers of betrayal. The tension lingered, like an unwelcome echo, every sidelong glance and stifled sigh, a reminder of the horror that had unfolded just beyond the velvet draperies. In a place where masks were already the norm, the Queen's demise injected a new, chilling undercurrent of dread among all who called the palace home. Shocking fact number 98, possible sedation before execution. Some contemporary accounts hint that Catherine Howard may have been given a strong dose of wine or other soothing draughts to calm her nerves before her final journey to the scaffold. This small act of mercy, if it indeed occurred, served as a grim reprieve, easing the physical pain of her ordeal, even as her spirit remained terrorized. A cup of wine, offered with clinical detachment, highlights the paradox of Tudor cruelty-compassion, administered not as genuine comfort, but as a tool to ensure compliance. In her blurred memory, Catherine may have felt only a fleeting respite from panic, a foggy haze that softened the edges of her terror. Yet, even in that sedation, she remained acutely conscious of the blade that awaited her, a final and inexorable act of state-sanctioned violence. Shocking fact number 99. Foreign ambassadors as witnesses. Among the spectators on Tower Green that fateful morning were foreign ambassadors representing European courts. They recorded every detail of Catherine Howard's procession and execution, dispatches back to their monarchs. In their tinted glass and ink, Henry VIII's authority was magnified across the continent. His reputation as a ruthless sovereign carried far beyond England's shores. Their reports, judged for sensitivity and sensationalism alike, spread tales of a queen's brutal end to far-flung capitals. In transforming Catherine's death into headline news, the ambassadors unwittingly reinforced the spectacle of Tudor power. Her execution became not just a domestic affair but an international broadcast of intimidation, signalling to other rulers that royal prerogative was absolute, and women, even queens, could be sacrificed to maintain it. Shocking fact number 1. 100 Rose Without Thorn turned sour King Henry VIII, famously dubbed Catherine Howard his Rose Without Thorn. Praising her supposed innocence and perfection, this pet name, once whispered as a compliment, took on a bitter irony with her downfall. The rose so carefully cultivated and displayed became deadly when its hidden thorn was revealed. In that moment, the very image of purity became a symbol of deception. The court's praise turned to mockery. How could a flower without a single prick hide such a dangerous sting? The juxtaposition of the nickname and the execution blade underscored the precariousness of royal favour. A rose, when plucked at the wrong moment, can shed its petals and its bearer's life with equal rapidity. Shocking fact number 101. The greatest crime, being born a woman in a feudal system. Ultimately, Catherine Howard's real crime was her existence as a woman under the Tudor regime. In a system where female autonomy was suppressed and male authority reigned supreme, she stood little chance of survival. She was condemned not for a single proven act of treason, but for the inconvenient fact of her womanhood. No law defined her fate, only the caprice of a patriarchal monarchy, unwilling to tolerate a woman who dared to have desires of her own. Catherine's story shines a stark light on centuries of gender injustice, a life destroyed by the arbitrary exercise of power, a warning that even royalty could not shield a woman from becoming collateral in a man's pursuit of dominance. Though her name has faded, her tragedy endures as a mirror, reflecting the enduring struggles faced by women in every age. Finally, the tragic life of Queen Catherine Howard, encapsulated in 101 shocking facts, is not merely a dry historical account of throne and power, but a profound warning to anyone who believes that title, status, or beauty can shield them from the cruel games of fate and political might. First and foremost, her journey from childhood stripped of her mother's care, through abuse, elevation to the crown, and descent into a bloody whirlpool, reveals the critical importance of empathy and protection for the vulnerable. In the Tudor machinery, a tender young girl was presumed to serve her elders, only to have those very kin and the law itself turn the executioner's sword upon her head. This reminds us that any society must denounce and prevent abuse, especially against children and the voiceless. Second, Catherine's story illustrates the terrifying potency of unchecked power. When an individual at the apex can rewrite laws retroactively to execute a spouse, justice becomes mere window dressing. We learn that power must be restrained, overseen by transparent law, and applied with genuine fairness, not wielded arbitrarily by individuals or factions. Among the 101 facts, some details evoke profound sorrow, such as shocking fact number 2, first experience of abuse, and shocking fact number 1, losing her mother, chilling us at the thought of an orphaned child suffering deep psychological wounds. Shocking fact number 7, the misbelief in love tugs at our heartstrings, revealing how abuse victims can be ensnared in the illusion of affection spun by their abusers. Conversely, certain elements strike us as unexpectedly intriguing. Shocking fact number 99, foreign ambassadors. As witnesses demonstrates that, despite the tragedy being domestic, Henry VIII's reputation and the courtly crisis echoed throughout Europe. Similarly, shocking fact number 87, valuables turned into spoils, shows how a young queen's jewels became coveted trophies, highlighting the nobility's callousness. Yet other facts may sound apocryphal and warrant further verification. For example, shocking fact number 81, possible pregnancy once more, or shocking fact number 98, possible sedation before execution. These might be centuries-old legends or painful truths, lacking physical evidence. I invite you to share which details you find credible, which you suspect are myth, and which constitute well-documented history. Ultimately, Catherine Howard's life teaches us about human rights, the necessity of transparent justice, and the power of sincere compassion. We learn that true belief in justice relies not only on law but also on ethics and humanity. Even the most powerful person can become a victim if the system places power above human dignity. If this story resonates with you, please like and share so more people can learn of it. Don't forget to comment below with the facts that moved you, saddened you, or made you question their authenticity. Tell us which speculations you believe, which you doubt, and what lessons you draw from the tragic fate of Queen Catherine Howard. Our history-loving community eagerly awaits your diverse perspectives, so we can together analyze, reclaim lost truths, and honor the voices of those time nearly forgot.